want to tape it up? This mic here. There you go. Thanks.
Just got it connected. Right time.
Thank you.
Hello everybody, welcome. We are live here on the south side of Minneapolis on Lake Street in front of Cadillac Pawn. Calvin Horton would be 44 today. He was killed by the owner of Cadillac Pawn during the uprising, the George Floyd uprising, a few days into it. You see his picture right here. This is his mother and his children, and his other significant others are up here, as well as attorney Benjamin Crump. We're going to hear a press conference from the family about the murder of Calvin Horton and how there's been no justice for Calvin Horton. He was killed again the second day of the uprising as a march was going down this street and some expropriation of goods were being had from the pawn shop, possibly in other places. And the owner of the pawn shop, who's from Wisconsin, shot and killed Calvin Horton, shooting into a crowd, killing him. He died a few steps away from where we are. There's construction going on right behind the street.
Matter of fact, we'll put them in the center. I'll step to the side like that. Okay. Yep, that's perfect right there. All right, let's start. Everybody set? Yep. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm attorney Ben Crump, and along with attorney Jeff Storms and attorney Jill Brisbois, we have the honor of representing the family of Calvin Horton. We have present also his children and his mother, Miss May Roberts, who are going to also address you. We have his youngest children, his twin boys, all the way to his eldest children, who are still asking questions. Why hasn't the man who shot their father in the back from all available evidence been arrested and charged with that crime? Right. To put it in further context, we are honored to have with us Nakima Levy-Armstrong and Jennifer Gilbert, as well as Trey Cruz with Minnesota, Black Lives Matter Minnesota, and the Minnesota Justice Network, who were also on the forefront of the call for justice for George Floyd, who everybody is aware of. And I know Khadijah, when she was talking to me, she said that it's just painful that while everybody was rightfully marching and calling for justice for George Floyd, based on what they saw with that horrific video, it is almost as if her father, Calvin Horton, who was killed by a business owner shooting from inside his store outside into protesters, was a forgotten man.
Right.
Almost as if his life didn't matter.
Right.
But his life did matter.
Right.
And it mattered especially to his children. These beautiful children. Shannon's children. It mattered to his parents.
That's right. His mama.
His mother.
That's right.
May Roberts, who had to bury her child. Something no mother should have to do, no father should have to do.
Right.
But they had to do it. And it doesn't make sense why they had to do it. Based on the available evidence, he was shot in the back.
Oh, wow.
So we're here today
The honking is in solidarity.
Okay. So the family and the activists are gathered today and this evening because 44 years ago, May Roberts gave birth to her first son. And even though his life might not matter to the powers that be, to the government officials who have given them no answers, despite the dozens of calls about her son, despite the dozens of calls about her father, have given them no answers. Today, on what would have been his 44th birthday, his life matters to May Roberts. His life matters to Cadillac Horton.
That's right.
His life matters to all of his children. Each and every one of them. His entire family. And so we're here to declare that Calvin Horton life matters. 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 Thank you. And before we have the family speak, we're also here to speak to a larger issue that's happening in America. The fact that we are reminded over and over again that there seems to be two justice systems in America.
That's right.
One for black America and one for white America. And it should be equal justice for every citizen in the United States of America. And Calvin Horton was a citizen of the United States of America.
That's right.
And the First Amendment applies to him and Nakima and Jennifer and Craig Cruz and Black Lives Matter and everybody who was marching for justice for George Floyd. You see, we're here today to speak to the powers that be here in the city of Minneapolis and America to say that you cannot protect people who are marching in Michigan with guns to reopen the state during this deadly coronavirus pandemic. I mean, Nakima, they didn't shoot rubber bullets at them. They didn't shoot tear gas at them, but seem to have different rules for the protesters who are exercising their First Amendment rights and calling for justice for George Floyd, their First Amendment right to freedom of speech, their First Amendment right to have peaceful assembly.
That's right.
You cannot have a different set of rules when Calvin Horton is marching with the protesters for justice for George Floyd and have a business owner shoot from inside his store out into the crowd of protesters.
Murder.
That could have been any protester that could have been killed. And so that's the larger conversation here in America. We got to be able to say that everybody gets due process of the law. People who are protesting in conservative causes and people who are protesting for Black Lives Matter causes. Everybody should deserve equal justice under the law. And so that's why we're here, because this is a precedent-setting matter. I mean, there are protests going all over America. And if we allow business owners to shoot black people for protesting for Black Lives Matter, then what kind of message are we sending to the world? America is supposed to be the great beacon of hope and justice. But more importantly, what kind of message are we sending to his twins? His 8-year-old children, his 12-year-old daughter,
That need their father.
Yes.
his 7 other children, to his grandchildren.
Yes.
What message are we sending to them if we say you can shoot their father, their grandfather in the back based on the evidence that we see with our eyes, that Attorney Storms will talk about in just a minute, that seems to contradict the medical examiner's report that says he was shot in the chest? That was really troubling for Cadacia. Because they saw their father. They looked at his chest and they saw firsthand that there were no bullets in his chest. So is this some kind of conspiracy to try to make sure that they don't get justice?
It's always been a conspiracy against blacks.
And so that's the important thing. The last thing I will say to you all is that it shouldn't be this way for minorities in America to have to go through such extraordinary lengths, Nakima, to get equal justice, to get simple justice. Jeff, May Roberts isn't asking for anything special that any other citizen would want. She's just asking, give her son the due process of the law that they would have given the business owner if the roles were reversed.
If he was a white man,
If the roles were reversed, what would the prosecutor have done? That's all we're here asking. Nothing more, nothing less. So now, none of them asked for this. But unfortunately, almost a month and a half has passed. They thought it only fitting to come on his birthday to remind this community, to remind Minneapolis, to remind Minnesota, to remind America that their father life matters. And so his daughter is first going to try to speak to you, Cadacia Horton, and then you will hear briefly from his mother, Miss May Roberts, and then you will hear from the attorney, Jeff Storms, Jill Brisbois, briefly, and you will hear a lot from Nakima and Jennifer and Trey, because they believe there's a pattern that exists here in Minneapolis with these type of dynamics. And so they know more about it than me. And I know there's some national media covering this matter who want to understand the history, Nakima, of these situations. So without further ado, we want to have you please give your consideration and attention to his daughter, Khadijah, as she tries to talk about her father's life and why it matters for her and her family, especially her brothers and sisters. And if you want to step right here, you come on this side. And speak as loud as you can, Khadijah.
You could say and spell your name, that would be great.
Yeah, loud, as loud as you can. You want
Real loud.
Outdoor voice. Big one on top.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Khadijah.
Hi. My name is Khadijah Lanaya Horton, and I'm Calvin L. Horton's third oldest child. I'm at a loss for words right now, but I just want to go back into speaking about how my dad's life mattered because it's important.
That's right. Take your time, baby.
You can do it.
You got your back.
We got your
Got your back.
Take your time.
His life mattered to me and my 6 brothers and sisters. Makaisha Horton, who's right here.
I'm Acacia.
Calvin Horton III,
Hi,
who's right there.
Calvin.
Calvin Horton, where's he at? Who's back there? He's 17. Shania Horton, who is 12. And the twins, who are 8.
Twins.
Kavan and Calvin.
Hey, guys.
The ones who don't even really understand what's happened. They just know that their dad is gone and that's it. His life mattered to his parents, my grandmother and my grandfather, to the rest of his family, and to an abundance of friends. I just want to say we're absolutely heartbroken at the fact that the man who was able to shoot my dad in his back and kill him is still free.
A cowardly move.
And we're left to feel as if we're the ones in prison. We want justice for my dad, and we aren't going to stop until we see it.
Right.
Amen.
That's all I have to say. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Justice for Calvin. Justice for Calvin. Justice for Calvin. Yeah, can you say it? Yes, no problem. Take your time.
C-A-D-A-E-C-H-A-H, last name Horton.
Say it again slowly.
C-A-D-A-E-C-H-A-H. And how old are you? I'm 20.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. God bless you, God. Your prayers as well.
And now you're going to hear from his mother, Miss May Roberts, who would be celebrating his birthday today.
Wow.
Hello,
Happy
everyone.
birthday.
My name is May Roberts. Calvin Lewis Horton was my son. I gave birth to him 43 years ago. Today would have been his 44th birthday. He meant a lot to the family. This shouldn't be. The only thing I want is justice, because I call, I get no answer, I get to run around. Nothing is being done for my son. This is my son, my firstborn
Yes, ma'am.
son. And I just want justice, that's it. Nothing but justice. Thank you all, and thank you all for listening to me.
Your
Thank you.
prayers are with us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Now you will hear from my co-counsels, Attorney Jeff Storms first, and then Attorney Jill Brisbois after him.
Nice, buddy.
Good afternoon, everyone. So You know, something happened yesterday that was interesting. Yesterday, the county attorney comes forward and asks for help, asks for witnesses, asks for evidence. When you talk about two sets of rules applying, why does it take Ben Crump coming to town and demanding answers in Minneapolis before the county attorney asks for help? And also, why, if it was so clear that this man was allegedly shot in the front, are they asking for help? Why are they not telling us and showing us evidence that this man was shot in the front?
Absolutely.
Why were they not telling us that this was a criminal act and that additional investigation needed to be done weeks ago? If this man could have been exonerated, he would have been exonerated. And he wasn't because he can't be, but it took the weight of Ben Crump and all of these folks and this entire movement to make something move in Minneapolis. Once again. And when we talk about the evidence, there is video. Video that the family went and got. Video that civilians put up so that justice can be had and truth can be seen. And we've looked at that video. We've broken that video down frame by frame. And at this point, from what our eyes show us, we do not see evidence this man was shot in the chest. And if there is evidence that exists, boy, this family needs to see it.
Amen.
And something tells me if that evidence existed, the county attorney would not have told everybody yesterday that they need help. And we know, everyone knows just from watching TV, living their life, you get evidence as quickly as you possibly can. Why was the county attorney not asking for that evidence 6 weeks ago? Why were they not showing the Horton family that dignity? Why were they not seeking justice for Mr. Horton? So today, I'm really proud and humbled to stand here with the Horton family and Mr. Crump and start asking the questions, getting answers to the questions that should have been had 6 weeks ago. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Jeff makes some very, very important, valid points. And as we bring Attorney Jill Brisbois before you, I do want you to know that there is social media videos from that night that exist. And as Attorney Jeff Storm said, and Nakima and Jennifer, we talked about it, it's very clear that when you look on his chest, based on what we see available to us now, there are no bullet shots to his chest. But as Khadijah told me when she first called me, she just can't understand this medical examiner preliminary autopsy that says her father died from multiple gunshots to the chest. Because we're looking with our eyes and that's not the case. Furthermore, the funeral director said that he didn't see any gunshots to his chest at all. But what we do see, Attorney Storms, is the video when they move his body, the blood all on the sidewalk that seems to be the shots were from the back. Furthermore, we see on that video that is very telling is the fact that you have a law enforcement officer out there after the shots are being fired telling everybody, get back, get back. There's a man inside the store shooting. That's on video. That's on video. If that is not probable cause to arrest and charge somebody from being inside a store, shooting out into a crowd of protesters. Peaceful protesters. You know, you can't control what everybody does, but the majority of people were out there marching for George Floyd was doing so in a peaceful, responsible way. And so he shot out into a crowd of dozens of people. And we know bullets don't have a name on it. That bullet could have hit anybody, Nakima. It could have hit anybody, Jennifer. It could have hit anybody, Trey. And so that's why we're here. You're going to hear from a great lawyer here in Minneapolis, attorney Jill Brisbois, who's helping us on this case as well.
Thank you, Jill. Welcome, Jill.
I want to go back and talk about one of the things that
Okay, you might, yeah, I got a yell.
Yeah, I want to go back and talk about one of the things that Mr. Crump brought earlier, which is the two different justices, specifically the dignity in the process. This family has not received dignity in this process. If this family were white and this was a sexual assault case, they would have a victim witness coordinator from the Minneapolis Police Department and the Hennepin County Attorney's Office regularly communicating with them, giving them updates on their case, letting them know that there's going to be a press release today that they're seeking more information. But this young lady has spent the past month and a half calling those offices, asking for information, begging for information, reaching out to attorneys for assistance, and has not received any information. The first information she receives about any update is through the Minneapolis Star Tribune article today saying they're looking for information, and that is not dignity in this process, and they deserve dignity in this process.
Amen.
Thank you.
Yes. And now I have the honor of introducing a freedom fighter who's been on the front line for far more than just this case, far more than just George Floyd. She's been on the front line for years here in Minneapolis, and we're honored to have her standing with Calvin Horton's family to demand justice. I give you attorney Nakima Levy Armstrong.
Good afternoon. I know that some of you are listening to the stories that have been told by the previous attorneys that have come before me, and you are wondering how could something like this happen in the city of Minneapolis, which has a reputation for being progressive. But as African Americans living here, we have tried to tell the public, we have tried to tell people who work in and outside of the system that we have two different justice systems. One for black people, one for white people, both separate and unequal. That is how a man like Calvin Horton, a father, a community member, a hard worker, could be gunned down while engaging in peaceful protests on behalf of justice for George Floyd. It is absolutely unacceptable that a white business owner felt entitled to use his gun to shoot into a crowd of people, knowing that he would get away with it. Why? Because of the conduct of Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman in showing us that black lives don't matter in Hennepin County and the city of Minneapolis. Just last year, an elderly white man by the name of George Reeves intentionally drove his van into a bus shelter where there were 6 African American men standing there. He injured all 6 men, some of them severely. And at the time that he committed this atrocious act, Mike Freeman declared that this man would serve no jail time. And up to this point, he still hasn't served any jail time. A white man coming from the suburbs into a black community, able to use his vehicle as a weapon and get away with it. But let that have been a black man. Just as in the case of Calvin Horton, that black man would have been under the jail.
That's right.
Black people in Minneapolis and Hennepin County are often punished very harshly in contrast to their white counterparts. And it is a part of a pattern, a devastating pattern that has gone on for too long. There is currently a petition asking for Mike Freeman to be recalled because he is not only incompetent, but his actions appear to be racist towards African American victims of crime. And it is unacceptable. Mike Freeman also has no business even being involved in George Floyd's case. He needs to be recalled immediately. And the murderer of Calvin Horton needs to be arrested and charged for the crimes that he has committed. We will not sit on the sidelines and allow this type of violence to be perpetuated against African Americans without there being immediate accountability. So we are calling as well on our governor, Tim Walz, to step up to the plate, as well as Attorney General Keith Ellison, and we are asking you to do your jobs and hold this murderer accountable now. I want to give my condolences to the family of Calvin Horton. His black life did matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita.
Now we will hear from Miss Jennifer Gilray, who's also been on the front lines right there with Nakima.
Yeah.
Give her a big round of applause.
Hello, I'm John Rieple, and I met Khadijah a couple of days after her father was murdered by John Rieple here. And I am also one of the people that was out that night protesting, as well as there are other people with us today among us that were out here protesting. So when Ben Crump says Calvin Horton could have been any of us, that is true.
Wow.
That is very true.
Wow.
And it's devastating that the Horton family has to go through what they're going through without any action from Freeman. I know they've even called the Victim Services Department here in the city and still got no response. It's been nothing. And they are not the only family that has gone through this. It has been time after time after time.
Right.
As well as we have a city council and we have a mayor who, some of them are doing their second terms on this city council.
I want to make sure they can hear you. Can y'all hear it? That you need to pause for a second? Okay, pause for just a second. You said some important stuff.
Taking a small break. This truck
city council that says that their responsibility is to govern the city, and one of those responsibilities is governing the police. If George Floyd was not horrifically murdered on Memorial Day, Calvin Horton would not have been in the streets protesting, as well as many of us would not have been in the streets, but Calvin would not have been killed that night. And we have a city council that year after year has been presented with different solutions to rein in the police, and they have not. They have done nothing. They still have done nothing to date. The one thing that they have proposed is it is not going to help us for right now, in the moment. It's not going to help us right today. We have police that are still in our community, that are still harassing people. They were just used yesterday to take homeless people that were in an encampment at Powderhorn Park, which is a couple of blocks from here. And we have elected officials that just sit back and do nothing. Even though our group, the Racial Justice Network, as well as many other groups, Black Lives Matters, Communities United Against Police Brutalities, and others, have gone to Native Lives Matters, have gone to the city council and the mayor with different solutions of what they could do, and they have not done that. And it is also a pattern, as other folks have said, to treat the victim in these situations as the criminal.
That's right. Preach.
And that is what is going on here. It is unbelievable that it's 55 days after Calvin Horton has been murdered. They have the weapon, they have the killer, they have everything they need, they have the location, and they have yet to charge him with murder.
Wow.
And I also want to invite everyone here back again tonight at 6 p.m. We're going to hold a vigil because, as was stated earlier, today would have been Calvin Horton's 44th birthday. We're going to have a vigil, and then we're going to march. We're going to march to an elected official's home because they need to hear from us. We're tired of this. Enough is enough. Change needs to happen now. Not a year from now, not 2 years from now, not 3 years from now. It needs to happen now. So please join us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. As we start to wind down and take a few of your questions, it's important to know that this is really emotional for his family because not only is it his birthday, but this is the first time many of them have been to this street where he was actually killed this very street. And Mr. Trey Cruz from Minnesota Black Lives Matter made that point to me very clear. So you're going to hear from Trey Cruz. Please give him a big round of applause, because Black Lives Matter. 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 Black Lives Matter.
Black lives
Matter.
Black lives
Matter.
Black lives
Matter.
Black lives
Matter.
No justice,
No peace.
no justice,
No peace.
Say his name.
Calvin Horton.
Say his name.
Calvin Horton.
Say his name.
Calvin Horton.
Mr. Crump, what we call this in the pattern of practice that Hennepin County in the state of Minnesota engages in is the art of the cover-up.
Big brother.
Just last week, in another big case, we found out that the Ramsey County coroner hid a letter from a nurse for 2 years.
Wow.
So this is a pattern of practice that a letter explaining what a nurse saw in the jail that resulted in death.
Wow.
So we can't trust the coroner's office because the coroner's office works with the police and the police work with the hospital to cover up murder of black lives.
Talk about
That's right.
Yes, sir.
And to avoid charges. 1,700 rape kits, Mr. Crump,
Yes,
were
sir.
found in the Minneapolis Police Department.
Wow.
That's 1,700 potential charges. 1,700 people who might have potentially went to jail, and 1,700 rape victims
Wow.
who have not received justice because of the art of the cover-up.
Order the cover. Wow.
The John. If one of us came to Minneapolis from the suburbs to solicit and got angry because we couldn't score, we would be charged with soliciting plus running over people at the bus stop who were coming home from work.
Yeah.
Wow.
If we were on our cell phone
Right.
driving,
Right.
and if it was a black lawyer driving on his cell phone, and it resulted in the death of a man,
Wow.
they would be charged and most likely have to serve jail time. That happened here in Minnesota, in Hennepin County, and Mike Freeman did nothing about that.
Mike Freeman gotta go.
So Mike Freeman has to go.
He has to go now.
The Minnesota has the worst disparities in the nation. Minnesota is the 4th worst place to live in America for black people. But it's the best place to live for others. So we want Minnesota to be the best place to live for everybody. And the way to do that
Yes, sir.
is for us to start getting justice. We want equal protection under the law.
That's right.
Period.
That's right, Jay.
So we are so glad that you're here to help us get justice for the family of Calvin Horton,
That's right.
for these 2 young twins,
That's right.
his daughter, and his mother.
That's right.
Yes.
Black lives
Matter.
Black lives
Matter.
Black lives
Matter.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I want to tell him I need an elbow.
Finally, we're going to hear from a cousin of Calvin Horton, Trey Ross. Did I say it right? Okay. Take your time. Man, this is hard, dealing with this. Me and my cousin, go back a long ways, We need justice out here. People, so we can unite again. It's crazy. I'm still dealing. It's still hard, man. It's hard for me right now. But I'm glad everybody came out to support. We need justice. Speak up.
Got you, man.
Got your man.
Calvin.
Thank you so much. And she didn't expect to do this, but before we get to your questions, it is his birthday. And we not only want to talk just about the tragedy, it is a celebration of his life too. And so we're going to call Nakima back to lead us in singing happy birthday, because I can't carry a note. And so y'all, let's sing so Calvin can hear us.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Calvin. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
All right, thank you all so much for doing that for his family. We all in this struggle together. So we'll take some questions. Mike, Jeff, if you and Jill can come and join me in the kingdom, stay close by. And Khadijah and Miss May will only answer questions about the family, legal questions. We'll try to have the lawyers and the activists answer those. Questions? Yes, ma'am?
But besides the shooting in the back or the chest, had the police laid out any other information about what happened? I think the store owner being inside and him being outside was new to us.
We got that from Facebook Live video, based on what the police said.
Have they told you
Khadijah, they gave the video, shared it with her, because she's been every day trying to get the video. I'm sorry.
I saw that video of my dad on the ground before I even knew that was him. So I went back and watched it, and it's like, from what the police are telling us is that the surveillance cameras inside the store, the looters got it, but they shouldn't have had the opportunity to get it is the problem. It should have been taped off as a crime scene, and they should have went in and got the security cameras at that time. We only have Facebook Live footage as of right now.
What are they trying to do? I hope we ain't doing this again on 35W.
Looks like this truck is like having difficulties driving down the street.
Go around, it's not that.
Yeah, let them go. Let them go, y'all. Let them go. Yeah, get him.
There's people that are sort of blocking his way, like, what are you doing, dude? I'm not sure how it started, but obviously he was on the side of the road, this side of this street that people were still using for this press conference. Again, we're here on Lake Street in Bloomington Ave.
Miss May.
I just show you what we gotta deal with. I just show you what we gotta deal with.
Every day in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Let me make that clear. My name is Andre Friedman. That type of behavior, that type of hatred is what we're dealing with, and that type of hatred is what got Calvin Horton killed. Hatred!
Seems to be the truth. It's his mother right here.
Take it down a little bit. Take it down a little bit so when you talk to him.
People are trying to distract from what you're talking about today with loud trucks, but I want to ask you about your son and what kind of person he was, where he grew up, and a little bit about your family.
Speak up.
If you could.
Okay.
Talk as loud as you can.
All right. My son was the type of person. He was a good person. If you asked him for something and he had it, he would give it to you. He wasn't a jealous hard person or nothing. You know, he was just a good-hearted person, and he loved everybody. He loved his family. I talked to him. He was supposed to be coming to Arkansas for his birthday today. But you see, he didn't make it. He's the type of person that shouldn't have been killed. I mean, you know, I know I'm not the only mother that had lost a son, and I fear for all the other mothers. I really didn't know how they felt until I lost my son. Now I know how they felt. My son didn't bother nobody. You know, I mean, you know, he was just a good-hearted person. And all I want is justice.
That's right.
I talk to the police's office. I call practically every other day. All they tell me is under investigation. They can't tell me anything. They talk about, like my granddaughter said, about the surveillance camera. I asked them about that. They told me the same thing, where the looters got it. I told them, I said, well, if y'all had did what you all should have done, take that crime scene off, go in there and pull the surveillance tape and do your job,
Right.
the looters wouldn't have got it.
Yeah.
But they didn't do their job. And they're trying to sweep this under the rug. No, I want justice for Calvin Lewis Horton Jr. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
How can we support the family? Like, are there any demands that you guys are making?
Well, yeah, the first demand is we want due process. We want a thorough investigation and to arrest the person for killing Calvin Horton Jr.
That's right.
It shouldn't be this hard to find out the entry wound of the bullet. They shouldn't be guessing when they look at a picture and it clearly shows there's no blood on his chest. There's video of the police pumping his chest in a life-saving maneuver, and there's no blood on the police officers. So if he would have been shot in the chest, the police should have blood everywhere. And so it's clear to us that there's something going on that doesn't meet the common sense test, doesn't meet the smell test. And so that is a way you can do it and keep joining the Black Lives Matter and the Racial Justice Association in protesting peacefully for justice. That's the first thing you can do. Also, Khadijah and their family have started a GoFundMe account for Calvin Horton because I obviously it's already challenging enough for minorities in America, and then to have it where his children will have to grow up without the support and services and advice and counsel. You know, you look at his children, his young children, and all of them are young. I mean, they're in their early 20s all the way down to 8 years old. And so they would need help. You know, he was working in warehouses. He did a lot of work with construction. He was a person like many regular, everyday people, I would imagine, especially black people in Minneapolis, just trying to make a living. You know, trying to support their families. So that's how you can help. Hey, Khadijah, where does that GoFundMe? I know y'all had to get together to try to bury him and stuff, and there's still expenses y'all dealing with that.
It's under the official Calvin L. Horton Memorial Fund. You can search it up. It should pop up. It's there.
Okay.
He said,
Yes, sir.
Calvin L. Horton Memorial Fund.
Family and also,
Directly today.
what does the family and also,
Okay, hold just one second. I'm sorry, they didn't hear you. Say it again.
what does the family and also Dr. Nikema Armstrong have to say about the place still being open up?
How about we let Nikema address that?
They're not gonna get another one of my dollars.
Back. They open it through the back. They got hours, different hours. They open
It's absolutely despicable
Saturday, 11
that
to
Cadillac Pawn Shop is still open for business. From my understanding, they're taking appointments.
Yeah.
We're asking people to not shop at this location.
Right.
We're asking the city to do its part to close down Cadillac Pawn Shop.
Right.
It is a danger to black people in this community.
Yes, sir. It's going to be like this.
Yes, Mr. Crump, with all the evidence presented to you and your associates, what is lacking on the Hennepin County Attorney's part to make an arrest?
In a lot of ways, we don't know what's lacking because, one, they haven't collected the evidence, it sounds like. They haven't even bothered to talk to witnesses. They're asking for witnesses to come forward 6 weeks later, right? So in terms of what's lacking, everything's lacking. An investigation is lacking at this point. Now, based upon what we've seen, we believe we've seen a man who was not shot in the chest, and we believe we've seen a man who was shot while he was standing outside involved in a peaceful protest. So that's what we've been able to see. And if that can be disproved, where's that evidence? But, common sense starts to tell you at a point, it might not be able to be disproved. Otherwise, the county attorney wouldn't have been in the Star Tribune yesterday asking for witnesses. So right now, the evidence looks like it's not how the story is told to us, but we need the county attorney to do its job and go get us that evidence so that conviction can happen.
Thank you.
What are the next legal steps going to be here?
Hold on. Jill was going to address that question too.
Sure, and I practice in criminal defense, and so I regularly see how law enforcement investigates cases. One of the things I want to say is law enforcement knew that this group of people would be here today, and they probably know that some of the witnesses to what happened would be here today, and they're not here interviewing people. They're not boots on ground trying to talk to these people that were here, that were witnesses. Instead, they're saying into the press, come forward, talk to us. Why aren't they coming to them and saying, what do you know, what did you see? And that's their job as law enforcement, is to reach out to the people in unconventional ways rather than putting out a public release. And so that is one thing that they could be doing to move this investigation forward.
All right, two more.
Could both the attorneys spell their names?
Can you spell your name?
Could both of the attorneys spell their names?
Jill Brisbois, Brisbois.
How do you pronounce it?
Brisbois.
Brisbois is spelling and
Yep.
then
And storms like thunderstorms, STORMS.
Are we going to see a civil suit? Are you going to ask
Yeah.
for a constitutional investigation of civil rights violations?
Yeah, so in terms of the next steps legally, first and foremost is law enforcement and the county attorney need to do their job, and there should be an arrest in this case. We're certainly going to be investigating and pursuing all avenues of civil justice possible, and that will certainly include taking the owner of this business to task in a civil court. And you'll see those steps play out more in the future, but there is not a single stone of justice that we're not going to turn over.
Ms. May want to make a statement.
I promise you, it's gonna be it because I am getting so emotional. This is the question I'm finna ask. I'm finna ask a question. I have heard that after 90 days, this man cannot be charged. And I want to know, is this the legal case and why?
That is not true. There is no statute of limitations when somebody dies. You know that?
I understand. Okay.
Minnesota has a duty to retreat law, which doesn't give legal right for shop owners to shoot and kill people. Do you know anything about that? Can anybody touch on that?
Yeah. Okay, Jim. Yep. Well, these brilliant women who are lawyers will address that. You go first, Jill, and then Nakima will come on.
Did you hear the question?
I did not.
Okay. Minnesota's duty to retreat law, which means that shop owners cannot legally shoot somebody from inside their shop to outside their shop if they're doing anything. Does that law play into part here where they released John, with the shop owner, with no charges, but yet there's no real fundamental law that allows him to shoot from inside of his store at somebody?
That's correct. There is both a self-defense law or justifiable taking of the life is the way the statute reads. There is also that duty to retreat. I think I talked to Don Zell today, who was saying that there is a back way out of that store, and the law does require him that if he has some other way to get out of this situation other than shooting, taking somebody's life, injuring them, he should take that. And my understanding is, based upon people that have gone to the store, there are those means necessary. And again, the duty to retreat applies when you're talking about somebody's life. He was protecting his property. He wasn't protecting somebody's life in there.
And I don't want to presume facts that have not in any way been put forward yet. There is nothing that is making, from an evidentiary standpoint, that his life was ever in danger. I mean, we shouldn't just take their word for it. There were dozens and dozens of young people who have cell phones everywhere. There were police officers out here. There is no information that this family has been told that his life was in danger. I don't think I understand. Somebody may have thrown a rock through his window, at which, as we have been told, he wasn't present at that time. And when he got here, he then, for whatever reason, shot into the crowd. That's what we know based on what people have said on social media. This case is unfortunately being put forth on social media. We need the police to come and do a thorough investigation. His family deserves it, his children deserve it, his mother deserves it, Minneapolis deserves it. Last question.
I just want to know, I know the family and you were talking about calling. Do they know of all this tape that is out there? And if so, are they sent? I mean, I realize it might be a moot point, but it might just system, but I'm just trying to say.
Yeah, I tell you, we're in the advent of technology in the world. Police use social media to arrest black people all the time. I mean, they on Facebook constantly. And so, with somebody being killed, knowing that this was a protest where people were posting constantly, they can. But we will gladly give them all the video that we have. Up until this point, nobody has asked Khadijah for it. Nobody has asked Miss May for it. They've just been calling, I mean, almost on a daily basis, trying to get any information. Miss May is calling from out of state. And I mean, she's been put on hold, she's waiting, and she's just frustrated. And I think we all are.
We all are frustrated. We tired of waiting.
Yeah.
We need justice now.
I said they expected this case to be buried because everyone's attention is focused on George Floyd and the debacles of the city council. And so they weren't expecting this. They weren't expecting this.
And I cannot say thank you enough to Nakima and Brother Cruz and Jennifer for being on the front line, even when the cameras aren't here. They've been here standing for the disenfranchised and the marginalized in Minneapolis. So I just want to say, personally, on behalf of the family, thank you
all right, so we're here in front of Cadillac Pawn banner, but also there's a vigil and a march tonight at 6 p.m. Cadillac and Southside family and attorney as well as a few because Calvin to get justice for you
guys.
What's your name?
Denzel.
Denzel. Good to meet you, man. This is mother.